Hello, ladies and gentlemen. That is a fucking crow. Welcome, Fragilities, to Twitch. You came at the right time, dude. I just turned the stream on. What's up, everybody? Hope everybody's having a good time. We're chilling. We got everything going on here. About to work on some more Xibalba concepts, so I hope you guys are ready for that. We actually just got the tech tree logic set up, so I can start to work on the Antikythera. Currently, we only have the worker. Game's done. Tech tree's finished. Obviously, we're going to add 99 more units and 40 structures eventually, on average. But we have the logic for it, so I can start working on that over time. What is the plan for today? You may ask yourself. Well, the plan for today, like always, is to make some progress. Today we're going to be working on Sycora and Githrovan updates, and then we're going to work on the design pillars for the Antikythera's visuals, try to nail down exactly how we're going to approach the construction of that Regency's assets. And yeah, we'll try to do some visual concepts. We'll see how much of this we actually get to. Some of this will be done off stream. But I guess I can mention that we did the tech tree map site organization. That was really mostly Veek, but I'll put it on the list anyway and take some partial credit for it, even though it's completely unreasonable. I didn't do anything. So, all right, let's get to it. We'll start off with the Sycora. The Sycora are in a situation where right now, if we take a look at their entry on the website, we actually see a wide variety of things, elements, if you will. But we don't really have that much information, explicit information about their playstyle. We do know that they have pretty fast projectiles, and that their projectiles don't really have the biggest amounts of damage. But we've got some stuff here. We've got some information about how they're going to play the game. I don't know if I mentioned how they build and progress through the tech tree. I don't think so. I think I sort of just hinted at it. I know that obviously they utilize dimensional gates, but this is almost like talking about between their reality and our reality as opposed to the battlefield, right? So, and it does say portals of more impressive magnitudes bring forth more imposing weapons, which is mostly a hint at the, I guess you could say, the production facilities as opposed to the tech stuff. But they do say that they have no tech requirements for production structures, and that they also have multi-branch tiered tech progression. So, okay, we don't really cover this, but it's kind of inferred from this paragraph. Even still, it would be nice to get some more information on essentially how they take to the battlefield, how they take over the battlefield, and what you can expect when playing as them, or what your win conditions likely are, what some of your goals are in the early stages of the game. These are kinds of ideas that I get when I read the more fleshed out examples of regencies, like the Ansifi, the Keltar, but I don't really get that from this because it just hasn't been written yet. So we're going to try to take what we already have and sort of move it into that direction where possible, and then add some more information. There's the idea of that at this point, a lot of my stuff is just modifying existing writing. But before I had enough to actually modify, I was mostly adding stuff. So there's going to be probably equal parts adding and modifying here. But for the most part, we're getting into that territory where I just need to keep reshaping some of the stuff I already have. So we will get there shortly. What's up, Veek? Shout out to Veek for the tech tree stuff. Epic. Okay. So I guess we could say dimensional gates for mass travel. I guess we could mention specifically to bridge realities. So yeah, this makes it a little bit more obvious that these dimensional gates we're talking about are specifically production structures, as opposed to there was the idea that, like, when I said mass travel, I meant mass travel between realities, but it could be taken as, oh, they just teleport like entire armies or whatever, which they probably will be able to do, but it'll be focused around units as opposed to structures, I think. At least that's my initial thought. That might change. Maybe there'll be like a fairly, maybe like the early version of that technology will be a structure, so that it's sort of the idea that you don't have the opportunity to like easily build a lot of it, but then it gets passed on to a unit that's more mobile or something over time when you ascend further up the tech tree. Stuff like that can be ways to scale the power of something. I think we talked about this actually in the very first Xibalba dev stream, concept stream that I did, where I was mentioning that, like, we are going to have essentially tiers. As we have so many tiers, a lot of the concepts that you're going to encounter in the first, say, 3 or 4 tiers, you're going to see them repeat in some way as the tiers progress, but they'll have some extra element to them that gives them more value, in addition to having probably some stat pads. They're not just going to be stat pads. There's always going to be something different. And the allegory I would give you is like the Madcap versus the Maverick in Cosmonarchy's Brood War mod. So the Madcap is this tier 2, if you will, Maverick, like a tier 2 incarnation of a ranged infantry unit. And instead of having stims like the Maverick has, so it essentially will move slower than the Maverick can move. It has the same base move speed. It has slightly higher range. And the more it stays stationary and builds up its passive, the faster it can attack. And so it's about standing your ground. It's a very different playstyle. Maybe almost too different for a straight up upgrade over another unit. But that's the idea, is that there's always going to be some element where similar combat roles are filled by units that do similar things, but they've got just a bit of a twist on them, enough of a twist so that they can move forward and continue on sort of bringing some additional value to the battlefield over just spamming the early versions of them, of the same kind of unit or whatever. So that's more or less the thought process there. With the resources and troops being exchanged, I think this makes sense. Basically, this is explaining, like, oh, they send the resources through some sort of central gate, which is where the town center is. They might be a regency, funnily enough, where every one of their gates can also serves as a resource depot, like all of their production structures. But obviously only some of them would train workers, so you have to kind of pick and choose what you want there. But that could be kind of an interesting aspect to them, is that, like, there's not really any logical reason why only some gates would be able to receive resources. So if all of the gates can, why not? What's up, James? Always with the non sequitur questions. I have no idea why I would ever get a Steam Deck. Even if I had the disposable income to blow on something like that, which I guess technically I do, but even if I was interested, well, I would have to be interested in order to buy it, and I have no use for it. I have a PC. I actually think that if you're always sat there working on your phone or whatever, or some tablet, you're always getting an inferior experience, usually. Like, the only reason I use my phone sometimes is if I'm in bed, and that just contributes to laziness, so I can't really say it's a net positive. I like how I just cleaned my glasses and somehow they got dirtier. The classic. But yeah, I have no interest in the Steam Deck. I mean, if you don't have a PC or you don't own a PC, then I can see the argument, but I have a PC, so it will offer me really nothing. Because by the looks of the, like, you would need a carrying case for it or something, I would imagine. I think it comes with it usually in most models. I would imagine it comes with it. But yeah, the idea of, like, carrying it around in your pocket or whatever, like you can with most phones, doesn't seem liable unless you have a really big pocket, right? So Yeah, eventually I'll get that laser eye surgery. Shouldn't become a superhuman mutant thing, probably. What, the Valve Index? Everybody says that's the best premium VR experience. And from what I've seen, that tells me I should definitely wait before bothering with VR. But my brother has a VR unit that we got him for Christmas or something, or his birthday this past year. I think it was his birthday. Uh, so, I mean, maybe it was more recent than that, actually. But either way, we got it for him over the past year, and I haven't tried it yet. It's not the Valve Index, though. It's just a headset. I think it's one of the Oculus models, if I remember correctly. Anyway, oh no, it's like a HTC model. I don't remember. Can't recall. Yeah, I don't really know. It seems like VR playthroughs are really difficult to quantify. Like, it's really difficult to relate to it if you haven't played it, I imagine. There's also the sheer number of people who first played VR by playing Half-Life Alyx. I'm guaranteeing you that was a significant number of the player base was first-time VR users. And you can't separate the novelty of the VR experience from the actual experience of playing the game. So your judgment is naturally going to be colored there. So, what's up, APOS? But there is no new Dead Space, James. It's just a remake, or not even a remake. Isn't it just a remaster? Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a Valve game, so of course it's a big cutscene. Yeah, bro. Exclamation point Xibalba will take you to this lovely page where you can see all 19 regencies that aka factions, that I've currently planned. And I've also written game flow and stuff, so. Not only are there 19 regencies, but we also have a 20th coming probably tomorrow. I'll work on that a little bit more. And that might not even be where we stop. But hopefully that Twitch command actually worked, by the way. I have no idea. Oh yeah, I guess since we're still towards the intro, I could do that. So first of all, if you stumble upon this page, it's still under construction. That should be obvious because there's only one unit there, but don't worry about that. There were only 4 factions in Warcraft 3. So maybe do some fucking research. All right, this is what Veek's got together so far. For some reason, holding Alt is destroying my... I was trying to move the window, but whatever. We have Fog of War. Oh yeah, and we also have order queuing, which you can't see the waypoints for yet, but as you can see, my man is spinning. We don't have rallies yet, but we got an Ahmed. We got unlimited unit selection. We got a man. So yeah, we already have this. Pretty good. There's a Visual Studio update is available. Did you know that? So we still have to do some pathfinding optimizations, some other stuff, but we already have all this going on using Brood War and other placeholder assets from other games. Give me that man. Some bugs with the terrain still that we'll fix over time. obviously 2D. We want actual gameplay and performance. And nobody's figured out how to use 3D anyway, so... Oh, shit. Owned. TBH. Just take that, thanks. Yeah, obviously not all the mechanics are in yet, but we got some stuff. Oh yeah, and just to demonstrate that Fog of War indeed does work for buildings, we'll reveal some Zerg here. What's up, Zerg? There you go. Fog to buildings. You can see minerals are revealed. There you go. Yeah, this is our own engine. It's the Antikythera engine, which is also linked on the website. Some of this stuff is a bit out of date, but I think we're just using C DLLs instead of C++, but I don't remember. And I think we didn't. We need to confirm our networking. We currently have some working networking, but we need to investigate more turn rate related stuff to. Basically, we need to find some turn rate calculation for high ping players. Like we have, it's not even really high, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, but we have like 150 ping or something between Vik and myself because he's in Poland and I'm in America. And yeah, that's obviously, we got some shit to do there, but I'm not going anywhere near the Started network, dude. What a bunch of jokers. No interest. I don't know if you've realized, but every product or every project that's come out of that website in the last like year has just been so terrible. And the most vocal people there seem to they celebrate laziness, which is something I cannot abide by. There are some people who have crossover between Started.net and the Frauds Club, like our Discord server, but I mean, I don't think we need to I don't think we need to advertise to that particular community. Like everybody already knows about me and what we're doing over there, I think. So if they're interested, they come over. And if not, that's fine. As far as the number of regencies on retail, we'll only have 6. We'll have some of the more conventional regencies to start off with, and then a couple oddballs. And then over time, expansion packs will release to do that. I've got an entire write-up on how our pricing model and stuff, because I really don't like the idea of microtransactions or anything like that. But if you're interested in that, you can read it on the website. There's all sorts of documentation. In the meta discussion page, we discuss pricing. I'll end up adding some more stuff over there, like game design related stuff, but yeah, it's just been a few weeks of engine development so far. I think we've broken a month, or we're pretty soon. By the end of this week, it'll have been a month, I think. Since we started working on like actual data and whatnot. We plan on releasing on Steam, probably Epic, as well as through our own website, where we'll take the full cut of the purchase instead of the share that Steam takes. But most people, I imagine, will find us through Steam. Yeah, I don't know enough about Itch because we have... I know it's just full of a ton of like low effort indie games and stuff. I'm sure there's some diamonds in the rough there, like in any place. Well, at least I would hope so. But I imagine there are. It's just not something I've got enough information on. I know that Itch allows you to set like a scaling price or like it's like Bandcamp, right? Where you can like say, oh, pay what you want, including nothing or something. And then the user chooses, I think, to like send some to Itch and some to the company. I don't remember. Maybe I'm confusing like what the user can do and what the pricer can, like the developer can do. But yeah, it seems like a place where it seems very small in terms of the storefront, but it might be something that we also release on. I don't know. Yeah, well, 10% is actually reasonable. I mean, the only reason why people put up with Steam's 30% is because it's Steam and everybody uses it. So they have like a functional monopoly on the space. Like technically they don't, because there's Epic Games and there's Uplay or whatever that thing is, and GOG Galaxy and EA Origin and I guess itch.io. But there's like, you're not really going to get very far there. This is the No Frauds Club, dude. Didn't you read the website? What's up, Milestone? You missed the technical demonstration, but feel free to rewind. We have Fog of War, and we have queued orders, or queuable orders, and we have unlimited unit selection and a bunch of other shit. I think the toughest part about yeah, there he goes. He's rewinding. The toughest part about planning to release on many platforms is it introduces more barriers to releasing patches and other updates, because you have to synchronize your update. Like, we're going to have a very clean structure to our own side of things. Being able to release updates on our own website is going to be super easy, but we don't want to fracture the player base. So we have to figure out how to ship an update through Steam, through Epic, through our own website, and through any other places we might release. So each additional one that we go for is going to get owned. Did you get owned by linking this? It's still sent through on my side, so. Oh, I see. They have their own sort of like. Oh yeah, they have command line tools for pushing updates and stuff. Yeah, okay. That actually does look pretty interesting. No, fraud was just an old inside joke from like 2012 or something, 2014, 13, something like that. And it just stuck. And so that was the original name of the Discord server and the Skype group, actually. It originated as a Skype group before Discord became a thing. And then we moved on to Discord, and then I opened up the place without changing the name. And now it's just here. What's up, Night of the Realm? Well, I don't think we'll be releasing early access. Like, we're only going to launch when we're confirmed, like, when we're sure that it works, that everything is done, and the 6 regencies for retail are done, and the campaigns are done. So we're not doing any early access shenanigans. We're not doing any, like, weird payment schemes or Kickstarters or anything, so. I really am very unhappy with the state of the industry currently. I think it's really unrealistic that, like, it's very unreasonable that consumers are, they're just fine with, like, they've become accustomed to, and I'm the same way in many respects, not expecting games to be done when they're released. Like, they just wait for some patches or whatever because, oh, clearly it's not done yet, even though it released and I can spend the full retail price for it. Like, that's fucking ridiculous. I really don't like how they're, like, you just use unpaid labor for playtesting and stuff, like stuff that you should be doing. Like, if people are volunteering for that in a closed community where you trust them, like, okay, that's fine. But if they're just like the average user who wants to play a game, I mean, I don't know, man. It's very, very dumb. Well, Shirk, I actually remember, I have a distinct memory of when I was moderator on Jay Barino's server, and I added a bunch of emoji, including Todd, the Todd head. And you said another man's memes are now our emoji or something. That was a very distinct memory. So yeah, essentially that's exactly what happened. Welcome back, Milestone. Your time warp has ended. I didn't tell you you could play as Sycora. What the fuck? shout out to Night of the Rum, who completed the second complete unit concept recently. I guess maybe it might be the first unit concept, technically, because the original Macrolon was just a traditional one. Either way, we have a unit concept that can be modeled now. It's pretty cool. I didn't even ask to be made moderator, to be honest, so it wasn't like something I wanted. I just figured I would throw some emoji in because people were asking for emoji. Actually, there was a great emoji war because I removed an emoji to make room for other emoji, and the one person who was using that emoji was also a moderator. And so then we just began yelling at each other and removing emoji. So that was another memorable installment in the saga of TISM. That was that experience. Always good. Always a fun time. So, cycling back to what we're doing with the Sycora, we know that they're going to come into our reality using dimensional gates. In fact, so here's something that's kind of interesting that you guys may not know, is that there is a plan to, in the pre-building phase, when you're setting up your buildings, right, they'll just appear as like transparent, sort of like wireframe editions of the structures and units, or something to that effect, where it'll be obvious that they're not really there, but it's like planned where you're going to put them. And you'll be able to move them around probably or whatever, or undo them and then rebuild them, that sort of thing. So that is planned to be part of the pre-building phase. And when you're done, you lock in your selection and everything happens. Rather than them just being there, there's going to be arrival animations for everything that you've got. So this involves like, I mean, for infantry, it'll probably just be like a generic drop pod per regency, especially since if I was trying to make an arrival animation for every individual unit, we would have over 2,000 arrival animations. It's pretty ridiculous. That's just for the units, not even counting the structures. But the structures are going to be pretty interesting because, like for the Sycora, because they just open up these dimensional gates, you would probably see the gate itself open up as the arrival animation of the structure. And that would be how you have the sort of like the enemies, like units step through gates as their arrival animation or whatever. And that would be an epic way to show off like, oh, the match has begun, because as soon as these animations are done, I'm getting control and the match begins. So you get this sort of like natural, like what, you know, there's like those 5-second countdowns or whatever before a game starts in Brood War and stuff like that. It'll be a similar kind of experience where that'll be an organic countdown. Maybe there will also be a visual countdown somewhere. But the idea is that you, like, these animations play, and then you know as soon as they're done, it's game time. And it's like a nice little ceremony to hype you up because you get to see some epic fucking arrival animations. Like, maybe some of them are a little bit more tame, but like I was talking with Veek the other day, or earlier today actually, the Omindris arrival animations is literally like a screaming metal serpent collapsing into the terrain from orbit and liquefying itself and reforming as a structure. So that's pretty fucking epic to see that happen. So, yeah. Yeah, I think some of the concepts or whatever that Night of the Rum's done, it'll be really nice to have them be like, I can imagine like a cutaway slice where it's like a vertical slice of like the left side of the concept art as a page and the right side as the model or whatever that DF puts together. And so you can kind of see like the translation between concept art and model. And then you get to see like some action shots or whatever of it. So you'd see that on like the unique page for it or something like that. I mean, that's one of the benefits to the open development process, where I'm literally going to be doing dev streams of working on campaigns and new regencies and stuff as development continues. So there'll be some epic. There will be some epic. Also, what Shirk said: 6,250 unique names and animations. Wait, why did we say 6,250? I forget. Because I know there was the buildings and then the units. But if it's 100 units plus 40 structures, it's 140, obviously. And then if you multiply that by 20, you get 2,800. So where did we get... Oh, because of weapons. So we were saying like 80 So 140 plus 80. Because that's like, I'm imagining it'll probably be higher than that actually, but imagine like 80 weapons per. I guess it would be higher because there's some buildings that are going to have attacks. So I guess we'll have to say like, we'll just add 5 more to that total. And then we have the upstarts, but I think was there something else? Was there some other information I needed for names? I guess abilities? I don't know. We could say like 40 abilities per regency. What if we multiply this by 20? We get 5,300. I still don't know how I managed to get 6,250, but it's going to be a big name. Big number. Fuck. English. Owned. You guys know that Tooth and Tail RTS game? Apparently, they actually did hand draw everything, but they only have 2 facing angles, so I guess it's a little bit more sensible. I think maybe they even mirror the one. I don't remember. There was something where I was looking at a GDC talk that the art director did where he was like, yeah, this was pretty easy. Use every word in the dictionary in one game. Go. A lot of that stuff is going to be like constructed names, though. Like the Omendiron, for example, is the serpent that constructs buildings and lives inside other buildings. That's a wacky race. If you guys haven't seen the Omindris, check them out. Pretty epic. But as far as the Sycora go, oh yeah, I guess I should use this opportunity to plug the forum. Do we get a forum? I don't think I reveal any stupid information by looking at this. But yeah, we have a forum. Check it out. We even got Regencies of Xibalba, including an essay that I wrote. It's not really an essay, but a post that I wrote. One thing that gets you even further crow-pilled, I think, is when you're in game, like when you're just outside game design as like a modder, like I was for a while. Obviously, there's some elements of like, oh, you underestimate and overestimate certain aspects of how much work certain things were. But most people would say like, oh, when you actually try it, you'll change your opinions because you'll see how hard it really is. But it's not really what happens. Instead, I see how easy some solutions are. And I also see how many man hours are required to make something. And how even a low quality product requires a lot of time. And it's just a collapse of like leadership, basically. Or just like really fucked up concepts, I guess. So even though something like Tooth and Tail obviously took a lot of time and effort to actually produce the art, the audio, the game design stuff, like it took time to program that in and produce it, right? But that's like saying that Flame Knives had a lot of time spent on all of its triggers. You know, it's like it doesn't really mean anything at the end of the day. What's up, Folka? How do you invest in this product? Well, we're not publicly traded. We're not even incorporated yet. Really, we don't like money is not really that big of an issue. The only thing is like, I guess later on this month or early next month, I'm gonna have to go back to work because my savings are gonna dry up. Which doesn't mean that like the project's gonna get brickwalled or anything. It just means that I'll have like maybe I'll have like a third of the time or 2/3 of the time that I currently have to actually work on the product, and then the rest of that time will be on work, like conventional work. And maybe I'm under or overestimating how much impact it's going to be because I don't really need that much. Like I was doing the math earlier, and in the interest of full transparency, I'll just say this shit on stream. So I only need about $1,200 or so, maybe a little bit more, to make a month's worth of bills because I keep my bills really low. Because I don't really need that much shit, right? Because I'm just focused on doing this all day. So aside from that and like working out, which I could do just by running around the block, there's not really that much that I need. Like I don't really need money for much. I eat and I pay bills. So So yeah, if we're taking 1,200, right? That's the amount of money that I need. Now, if you think about like 1,200 times 12 for a year, then I need 1,440 or $14,400 per year as like a base salary, which is super low. I think that might even be below the poverty line. So it's really not like I don't actually need that much money, right? So when you're considering that, in order to so you $21 is $30 after the 10% or the 30% that's taken by Steam. And then if we multiply that by 0.3, which is what I'm assuming my take will be about 30% of revenue, that's 6.3. And if we take 6.3 and we multiply it by, I don't know how that even happened, 6.3, fuck, math. And we multiply that by, or I guess we divide 1440 divided by 6.3. We get to about 2,300 if you round up copies of the game we need to sell across a running period of a year to get me 1 year's worth of personal costs covered. That's a very achievable number, especially if we divide that by 12. That gets us about 191 copies, again, rounding up. 191 copies per month. Super doable, to be honest. Like, I know maybe I sound like a complete lunatic saying that, but it's super doable. This game has a ton of content. The value for dollar you're getting when you have, like, you're getting, like, just the single player content alone, maybe 1 hour per dollar of money spent in terms of content. And that's assuming you could beat it in, like, par time, which a lot of players won't be able to because it's going to actually challenge you. So that's assuming you don't engage with any of the co-op content, the single player scenario content that's not related to the campaigns, the editor for making your own content, the multiplayer, any of that. Like, if you don't engage with any of that, you still get $1 per hour, and it's actual content that's trying to compete for your time, not just like grind. So the value for your dollar is pretty crazy, especially compared to, I don't even think that's crazy. I think that's what it should be, but that's never before seen, right now anyway. And not never before seen, but it hasn't been seen in a while. So the financial side of it should take care of itself, assuming we get the word out there and we get like enough people interested in the project. And that's what part of the silver lining of doing the open development and just streaming it casually is that more and more people are going to come in. So with that amount of like people, I only need to sell 191 copies per month on Steam specifically. So less than 200 copies per month will cover my shit. That's pretty easy to do, to be honest. I don't really think that'll be that big of a deal. What do I think of the Cyberpunk disaster? I think that they just promised too much. And I think it's obvious when you find, I mean, I think that they fucked up. Like, I don't have a sympathetic outlook to them because CGPR did actually say, like, outright, hey, we don't have, check out this trailer that we made specifically for showcasing a trailer, and how the trailer was, like, completely different than the game. I mean, not only was that obvious when you play the game, but it actually was. Like, they came out and said that later. Maybe Kanye West would find your game. Yeah, some big influencer. Also, Shirk, I would like to be a fly on the wall when there is a federal employee that has to incorporate the No Frauds Club product. Or company, rather. That would be pretty hilarious. Well, it's much appreciated, Folka. It does mean a lot. I mean, I really am averse to the idea that people would be paying, like, I'm really averse to the Kickstarter model, for example. Like, people who are paying money for a product that they aren't actually getting, to me, feels really fucked. Like, on a ethical level, if you will. Like, I'm taking money without actually showing you anything. It's just like a promise. And then I guess if I don't hold my promise, then I don't know if you have to pay that back. I don't really know. I haven't really looked into it. But I really don't have that much of an idea of like, or I don't really have the idea of like, there's a reason why Kickstarter is called Scam Starter. I'll put it to you that way. It's colloquially referred to as Scam Starter and shit like that, like Indiegogo or whatever. I'm not really a big fan of those marketing, like self-funding or crowdfunding opportunities. I wish I just had the money lying around that I wouldn't need to worry about it at all. That would be the ideal scenario, but I didn't save up. I didn't get an opportunity to save up that much. So that's sort of where we stand on that. And I also, like, it's possible to court investors, especially if you have a product that, like, you can show. Right now, we're using a bunch of proprietary assets from other games, so we can't really show that. And that's the main thing that would like stop us from being able to even do a Kickstarter even if we wanted to, or try to get investment funding or whatever. The main reason I would never want to secure like investment funding from people who didn't really buy into the project is because for the most part they're not just doing it to get the project off the ground. They're doing it because they want like a return on their investment, obviously, and want to control some of it, like some of the end result or whatever. So like it's a bit different than like what Folka was saying, where he literally is just he buys into the vision and he's on board. I would have to convince people of that on like a more individual level, I think. Yeah, Kickstarter trash. I mean, it's pretty easy to. I'm surprised there was a Planescape game. Isn't that an RPG or something? I would have thought that a game like a franchise like Planescape wouldn't be very far away from Kickstarter, but I guess the Shenmue thing is also an example of that. What's up, Shambleman? Yeah, so I see what you're saying, Folka. Like the return on your investment would be a game to play that is actually fun. So if more people can get that return on their investment aspect, can have that be what they're interested in, then we could probably start a conversation about it. But you know, well, right now we were talking about a bunch of random shit. So we demonstrated where Antikythera is, where you can run around and shoot stuff and control stuff, and there's fog of war, and there's queuable orders and unlimited unit selection. Besides that, we also did. We talked about finances. We talked about some other shit. We're working on the Sycora today, the Githrovan as well. Try to get their play styles fully explained and some of the specifics, and then we'll work on the Anciphi's visual design, some pillars for them, and what I expect their overall visual look to be. And then beyond that, I think for the most part, it'll just be like, I don't know, it'll be fairly conventional stuff, I think. Yeah, that's pretty unfortunate. Yeah, it does feel that way. It's specifically about video games. I guess Kickstarters do extend to things that are not video games, but for me, it feels like video games always have a ridiculous like. Just on Kickstarter alone, right? To have a successful Kickstarter, you're encouraged to do these ridiculous like stretch goal things, right? And the values are always ridiculous. Like it would not take it really doesn't take that much money to make a game. I'm sorry. It doesn't take that much money to make a game. Now, if you're talking about like paying yourself a high salary, that will take some money. But it's not like if you're making your own engine especially, but even like using another engine, you don't have to pay fees until you ship the product financially. Even then I think like you might only have to pay some sort of royalties or something. I guess for Unity specifically, you need to pay for netcode or some insane shit like that. But for something like Unreal, you don't need to worry about that, to my knowledge, because I was actually looking into using Unreal a couple of years ago, so I kind of know about that a little bit. Anyway, maybe some stuff has changed with the announcement of Unreal 5, but it just seems to me like it doesn't really make sense uh, to go the route of Kickstarter for a video game. I've heard really good things about Shovel Knight. I haven't played. I have played it a bit myself, but I didn't play it for very long. It's not really my kind of game. I don't really like side scrollers and platformers and stuff. I prefer stuff with larger scales. But it seems like they believe in precision and skill based gameplay and stuff, which is enough to set it apart. And then I guess their financial practices were exceedingly different than the majority of the games industry, where apparently they were originally supposed to make like a second playable character, and instead of doing that, they're just making a sequel. And I guess Kickstarter backers, because they didn't actually deliver on what they initially said in their Kickstarter campaign, they are just giving the backers a free copy of the second game as like a token or whatever of good faith, like saying, yeah, we decided we didn't want to go that route. So in return, instead of doing that, we're going to make a second game, and here's a copy of the second game because you guys paid initially for something else. So hopefully this is like an equivalent outcome, equivalent payment or something, or return on your investment, I guess, to use our previous things. Well, I don't know what exactly you would want specifically, Folka. I guess that would have to be a very specific conversation. But that would have to be something that we just hash out on a specific case. Oh, I was actually thinking of Hollow Knight. Shovel Knight's a different game. Oops. Never mind. I've never played Shovel Knight. I've only played Hollow Knight. Owned. Never did. I never knew anything about Shovel Knight. I know the soundtrack of Shovel Knight, I think. Maybe that's also Hollow Knight? I don't know. Yeah, there is what Knight of the Realm says. Like, that's one of the main reasons why I would never court conventional investors, because they're always going to, unless they promise to literally just be like it's the same thing as like people often ask to be like, would you work for Blizzard? And obviously, like, no. But if I was going to work in the industry, in an abstract company, like no-name company, that can pay me money, pay me a reasonable salary, and by reasonable, I just mean like I can pay my bills and shit, to direct a game, as long as they're not going to get in the fucking way, then like I don't really see a problem with that arrangement. I will produce a title, and I will not have microtransactions, and I will not have all of this other scummy shit, and that's it. I played Hollow Knight with Patrick, and we were I was jumping and moving, or no, I was moving, he was jumping and attacking, and it was a tag team gaming, both people on the same, controlling the same character thing. So, needless to say, it was not the same experience that most people have with the game. It was a little gimmick we were trying to do for streaming, for like a while, like years and years ago. I actually have some ancient video of us doing that with Dark Souls 3, because of course you pick some hard games for this sort of gimmick, because that's the way it pays off. It was pretty funny, because for Dark Souls 3, he was the attack button, and I think he was like use button as well for like using stuff, but I would just change what weapons he had available and what items he had equipped, and I would also control the camera, so it was pretty ridiculous. The trouble is we used TeamViewer for it, and TeamViewer has like a full second of delay between inputs when he was attacking, so I had to like lead the attack. I was movement too. Yeah, that's another thing. I think he was dodge and I was move and camera. So it was just a fucking mess. It was pretty ridiculous. Like, good luck doing anything in that game. It's already very imprecise and clunky as it is. You don't need to add more input delay. All right, let's go back to Sycora, dude. We got to go back to Sycora. So the Sycoran war machine comes out of portals. They're going to arrive in portals. Their portals are going to emerge. I did like the idea of the concept of you being able to see the units walk through the portals, and they would look very different but they would leave behind a part of them on the other side of the portal, right? So they would come through, and some part of their true form would be missing because it's a different reality and they're extra dimensional. I kind of like that idea. So we'll say, like, I'll just document that and say, units are visible in their true form on sides of portals, and visibly lose some part of themselves when crossing. Okay. Just because I think that's pretty neat. So I don't know exactly how whether or not I'll work that in here, but that will be an interesting challenge to do visually. Because we'll need to do concept art and models and stuff for the original graphic, like what they're supposed to look like. And then we'll just have to like remove shit, basically. Or I think it'll mostly be removing stuff. I was thinking for the audio editing profile that feels like something is missing. So I was thinking that for their voice profile, when I edit them, I would find some critical effect that I would that like would be helping to make them feel correct and like what they should be, and then I would just remove that effect. So there would be something, some semblance of it feeling like they're missing a part of themselves. And then I guess the tough part is like unless you've heard the effects, you might not really have an idea of what they're meant to sound like. But I like the idea anyway. I think that that could be pretty cool. So we'll have to wait and see. No, they're physical beings. Yeah, could you imagine your headphones are broken on one side and you don't ever hear any? Oh, it's really weird that the Sycora don't have any voice acting. So I guess I can work that first idea into this line right here where we can say, uh, there you go. I think that sentence makes sense. I rewrote it a bunch of times before even finishing it. A glance at the true form of Sycoran warriors can be taken as they cross through these ethereal gates, losing a part of themselves in the process. That's fine. The drawing SpongeBob made of himself and brought it to life. Well, kind of. It's just that they're 3-dimensional instead of 4-dimensional, and the 4-dimensional ones are the real SpongeBob to the 3-dimensional ones, fake SpongeBob. I don't actually remember that one, but I vaguely recall that one, Shamble. Do I envision my game to have a ton of custom EMS settings? Yeah, so there will be like when I was doing the title mockup a while ago, I actually don't even know where that is. It's probably in my graphic design section. It's nothing really to look at, but I'll show it for the sake of this discussion. So your main menu would look something like this, where you get to pick between the different games that you want to be playing, and there would be like some social media shit in the bottom right where you could click on that. There's a ton of other screen space over here that we could use, but I haven't really, again, this isn't very elaborated. And then for Cosmonarchy, it would be something like, there's like a YouTube patch preview link or whatever would be in the bottom right. Immersive is essentially single player. Competitive would be matchmaking. Custom would include like cooperative levels and whatnot, as well as arcade stuff. So you would imagine like if somebody makes a custom map, they can host it. You'd be able to browse what custom maps people have made and made public, and make those as your lobby, that sort of thing. So yeah, there'd be like, I'm sure there'd be people who make like fucking bounds and tower defense maps and shit. Kian wants to make an RPG style thing using the Dreamhold framework. So there's a lot of stuff that people can be, will be able to use. This is what Dreamhold theoretically could look like. There's a little cheeky Discord advertisement in the bottom right where you can join the server. And then you get the solo opera, the custom opera, which would be like custom games using this or whatever. So yeah, the idea is that there would be a wide variety of things that you could make with the environment at hand. And this is something we cover in the meta page, but holy shit, this is a big page. This is something we cover in the meta page, but when you purchase Xibalba, you would get perpetual license to the single player content and as well as some other stuff, a non-commercial license to the source code of the Xibalba titles. So as long as you're not trying to sell a product, as long as you're just making a mod or a map or something, you can just have the source code and edit it to fit whatever you want. So that's our current plan anyway. I feel like I'm missing a message from you, Night of the Realm. I guess you're talking about the main menu background or something? If that's what you're referencing, then yeah, absolutely. I think it would probably change over time, and sort of like in Counter-Strike where you can set your own custom background, people would probably be like, you'd be able to set whatever you want, but if you just left it on default, it would change to different sort of backgrounds depending on what the most recent expansion was or something. Or like if there's an event happening. So we talk about their shields here. We mentioned the shield batteries and the little thing that happens where they get increased movement speed when their shields are depleted. Yeah, okay. So here's where we'll talk a little bit about their tech progression and their single structure construction and stuff like that. So essentially how they spread their influence on the map itself. Because we've talked a lot about their tech tree. You got owned by something. If I switch to live chat, maybe it will show me what you said. Nope. Never mind. Owned. I imagine some of the more radical Sycora would probably be willing to do something like that, but I think the issue is that it's such a pain to get like even autonomous technology of their own to run. So the thing is, like, it's kind of a zero-sum game in a way. It's just a very long playing zero-sum game. They're strip mining resources from the reality that we are in so that they can fund their own stuff back at home. back in their home reality. And as a result, like, there's not really going to be that many regencies that are interested in sharing that, right? Not really that many regencies that are going to be interested in allying with them as a result. Like, some of them are going to do it because there's like a bigger threat somewhere. And some of them will do it maybe on a more long-term basis. But the end goal of the Sycora is always to perpetuate their harvesting operations, because that's what they need back at home in their own reality. Um, oh, I wonder why Susan deleted that. That's very strange. Yeah, okay. The main menu background would have to be something where it's like, it could be like animated splash arts or whatever. It could be something, you know, you get to pick like you get to customize like which one you want or whatever. I don't really like the StarCraft 2 approach, but I feel like most of that is because, for one, they look terrible, and they're also laggy. Like, when they first initialize, they hit your whole game. So obviously we would want to not do that. We would need to preload it. And I guess there'd be a low detail option where it would just be a static version of the same thing if you didn't want the background animations, or if your computer, I mean, I don't think it would be difficult for computers to handle that, but if you wanted to minimize RAM usage or whatever, then you could do that. But yeah, I do think that's something that shows, really grand scale, like giant armies in the background. I imagine maybe you've got a couple of like, as an example, you could have like a couple members of a specific regency, like overlooking a massive army of the same regency, marching into some distant vanishing point. So it would be something like them on a hill looking over a giant. Maybe it's an active battlefield. Maybe it's just one where instead there's instead of being active, it's just like a march. Some sort of endless march. I think that could all work, and that would obviously depend on what regency you've got as your background. So, but something that shows a ridiculous number of units is really ideal for the scale that we're going at, and something that does instantly communicate what's going on. And then, with that taken into account, that would be the Cosmonarchy backgrounds. But then there would be like a more personalized version of that, I think, for Dreamhold, where it is a little bit more smaller scale, because the game is generally more smaller scale, I think. Well, yeah. So the resources are just the same ones that everybody else is mining. That's why it's a zero-sum game. Is because the Sycora are taking the resources that they're using some of the resources for their war effort, but the bulk of them are going back home. And the martyrs are almost like the idea is that it's kind of abstract, but instead of spending the money to generate the martyr, because you're not building a new unit, you're calling them in from another place. It's like you have to justify that there are enough resources. You have to first send enough resources back home to justify requisitioning more. So it's a little bit more abstract in terms of why they're spending their money. Some of the regencies have that sort of thing going on, where like you're harvesting resources, but you're not really using it in the same way. Like the Thruk are technically spending the money to assemble a construction site or a new unit, but they are the resources. So it's a little bit different than like, smelting the resources into a Maverick suit or something for Antikythera. So yeah, trade would be somewhat of a benefit, but I don't even know what they would be trading. You wouldn't just trade more, like, one resource for another necessarily. The resources are the same thing. So everybody's trying to get more of these resources. You know what I mean? I feel like maybe I should actually set up a stream chat on Discord, because I'm pretty sure I can get that from Restream. I go to settings. There is a Discord section. Oh, whatever. It requires me to like re-auth and sign in and shit, so I'll just do that later. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of upstart negotiations. It just really it depends on, like, I don't really know. I haven't thought too much about diplomacy and stuff and trade. I think most of the time trade stuff feels too overcomplicated in games. I also don't want resource trading between players, even on an allied team, because then you can just feed one player. And the counter to that is usually to lock trade behind a timer. A more organic version of that limitation would require trading posts, but then you have like a structure where most of the value is limited to if you have allies or not. And otherwise, you have a structure that like provides a lot of value and also has this other thing. So either way, it feels kind of lazy and clunky from a design standpoint. So I would prefer to just not have trading at all between nations. And if I don't have trading between regencies, I don't really know how you would have trading between regencies and upstarts, because like I don't know how you would justify that to the same degree. I think instead there would probably be like dedicated areas where you could move like small groups of units or whatever and like pledge them somehow. Where if you move them to this location, like they are given over to the upstarts or something. I don't really know. Even that feels a bit gimmicky. So I'll figure out how I want to incorporate that. But upstarts are also really only going to be in the early stages of the game, I think. So. Okay. So let's see. Well, so I guess we'll say one structure at a time. Okay. All right. So now we've got a little bit of information on how the that is handled. I guess we'll say can establish I'm not really sure if that makes sense, to be honest, but let me actually look through this production structure. So it looks like we have it for the Sycora and for... Oh, no, it's just the Sycora, I guess. At least that's... interesting. At some point, I am going to have to nail down how many upstarts we have per for retail. I guess that number probably won't change too much, though, because the upstarts are going to be more like conventional RTS factions in terms of how many units they have, as in they're not going to have that many, so that's not really as much of a concern. Yeah, exactly. Yesterday, I updated the Ember Seat, and they feel like an actual Regency I want to play now. They have the mercenary aspect, which is where they get their frontal assaults through. Like their heavy hitting tech is mostly through mercenaries, which are going to be very expensive for them. And then they have a bunch of like harassment units and swarming units and stuff that serve as like frontline fodder and combat disruption that are a little bit more representative of the member nations. But they feel very, despite the fact that they're very disparate and they have so many different elements to them, it still feels kind of unified in terms of how their tech tree like branches are, essentially. All right, I have to think a little bit more about the tech progression aspect. I'm going to take a quick break to use the bathroom, get some more water because I'm almost out. And when I come back, we'll bang the rest of the Sycora out, and we'll move on to the what do you call it? The Githrovan updates. I'll just give them another once over and see if there's anything else that needs to be added before I start to more heavily consider them. I figure they'll go a lot quicker, and then after that, I'll be able to I'll spend a little bit more time on the Insifi concepts and stuff because obviously I need to do that to get Alexander best equipped for his stuff, his duties. So I shall return, BRB. I hit both buttons on my stream deck at the same time. Pretty prank. Anyway, I'm back. So, Sycora. Psycho. That wasn't intentional. There were a couple of things that are kind of unintentional, like Omindir and like the Omindris in general, have starting with Omen, which is kind of like Omen, like the word Omen. And then there's obviously Sycora. I didn't think about those until after. What a prank. So I was trying to think a little bit more about the progression, right? The tech progression for Sycora. Initially, my thinking was it would be kind of cool to have no tech requirements for some structures, and like specifically production structures. But the problem there is that obviously you can spend a bunch of money on something and then not be able to use it if you don't have the tech requirements for the units. So I don't really see much of a massive value. It also doesn't feel like it jives with the Sycora in general. The concept of the Sycora is that they have this element to them where they need to like justify the expenditure of more martyrs, and that means that they need to have like a evidence of a proper amount of resources that can be harvested. Like this is something they can responsibly invest into. And that's almost like a abstract lore world building version of what the player already thinks about, was like, if I get higher tier tech, or if I build a lot of workers and then I run out of resources to harvest from, like that's a poor investment, right? Poor strategy. So we don't really want to do that, obviously. But that's like one example of what I would be thinking about here. So I think they probably do need more conventional tech progression, as opposed to worrying about like, oh, you can build some of your units without worry. Maybe you can make an argument for no tech requirements for defensive structures. That would be kind of interesting. I feel like maybe it would guide them a little bit too much into turtling role, though, which is not really what I want for them. But they are meant to be a little bit more of a conservative early action, like not as much of an early action regency, basically. Their early action will be like maybe expanding or doing something in the early game like that, more economic. I mean, they can rush. Any regency can rush, but that won't necessarily be their specialty. At least that's not how I'm designing them. Of course, there's always the difference between what you think is going to happen and then what actually happens when it comes to game design for multiplayer games. So, let's see. I realize now that I said velocity of their kinetics. That is just the same thing as this. Oh no, it says rates of fire. I guess this is just consider like restating that. Okay, that's fine. Never mind. False alarm. Don't need to rewrite that after all. Prime Gate is definitely like a placeholder name. It's pretty boring, I feel like, but we'll stick with it for now. Oh yeah, that was the idea that I had earlier, is their production facilities could be used as resource return depots. So we'll say yeah, I agree. One thing I am a bit interested in, I won't say concerned by, because it's not really that concerning to me, but it's interesting to imagine a lot of regencies using structure-based construction, and then what do their workers do? Do they only harvest resources at that point, and I guess scout. But I don't really think that's that big of a deal. I mean, maybe we can find some other uses for some of the workers, but there's going to be like maybe 5 or 6 different workers per race, per regency anyway. So, like, you're going to have higher tier workers. Veek was asking if the tier 10 worker would be stronger than every Brood War unit. I think some of them will probably be like maybe a bit tankier or something, but I don't think that they'll gain that much in terms of combat potential. They might get some sort of... I don't really want to overload them. I think their role should definitely remain pretty entrenched in harvesting resources, and in the case where the Regency uses workers for construction, building some stuff, but... I think the Sycoran harvesters will probably have ranged harvesting as well. And maybe some of the early models, like the tier 3 worker or whatever, will even potentially hover. Not fly outright, but hover, which means it moves slower over terrain, impassable terrain. But that means that they could access like completely island expansions or whatever a little bit faster. Yeah, tier 10 worker nukes the area of his death. Save all of these ideas, and you'll be able to do them in your own custom maps. Epic. One thing that did just occur to me that I feel like probably would be a bit gimmicky, definitely would be a bit gimmicky the more I think about it. Kind of an interesting idea, though, is that maybe the more resources a specific gate gets returned, the like it eventually levels up or something. But I guess if we wanted structure leveling up, we would just have the production facilities be like receive upgrades or something. Individual upgrades that would be like the Zerg mutating stuff, or the town centers in Warcraft 3 leveling up or something. I've got DF doing voice acting right now, so I think he's a bit busy. He hasn't shared anything else. He did say that he tried to quick draft of the model with the older concept art before you did the T-pose, the T-pose top view. So I can nudge him about it after the voice acting stuff is done. What else we got here? T-posing to assert dominance, yeah. One thing that I was trying to figure out is, like, I was wondering if Balathal would... Balathal seems to be pretty solid at animating, and it didn't seem like it took him too long to animate... To rig and animate the Ecclesiast. So... If DF rigs it, then Balathal theoretically could do the whole thing himself pretty easily. Like the animation. But I don't know if Balathal knows how to animate in 3ds Max or is interested in learning how to animate in 3ds Max. That's the trouble with having multiple programs in the pipeline. So. I was actually interested in trying my hand at modeling some of the concept art. I'm not sure if the mech is a bit too ambitious or complex for somebody like me who's not very done much modeling whatsoever. But I feel like it could be more than possible to assemble that shit. At least like a rough draft or something. Got to get my music back on. Video paused. Continue watching. I was gonna say I'm pretty sure I was in a playlist. Oh, you could, but I don't know if the programs can export without losing data, and the lighting configurations are completely different. So I'm pretty sure we just need to get everybody onto 3ds Max, to be honest. Everybody has to pick one. That's my thinking. We'll see what I mean, maybe DF just learns animating really quickly and slaps it together. I don't know. But I was just thinking of what we currently have, what would make the most sense or what would be the most easily possible thing to do. I'm actually not sure. I mean, Sycora are going to be a little bit kind of hermitous or whatever. Like, not in the sense that they don't interact with other regencies, but like they don't want to be here. So they're not going to be massively like I'll definitely explore a lot of those interweaved aspects of their culture with the campaign, since the first full-length campaign of the game is going to be a Sycoran campaign. The Mason should have external armor. So that's the one thing about the loader references, is that kind of encapsulates the... If you had to envision the loader as an exosuit, instead of it being a separate piece of machinery, that's kind of what I was going for. This like big, wide, clunky looking walking unit, right? The SCV hovers or whatever. But like the Maverick, more so that like there's the walking. You're actually walking. Maybe like the Goliath even, in terms of the walk cycle. So there's probably more information I would need to write down if I had to guess. But it is a little bit more like a suit or power armor than it is like a separate piece of machinery being piloted, if you know what I mean. Like if you remember the StarCraft 2 intro cutscene where Tychus puts his like hand in a hand, that's kind of what I'm getting at, where it's like an extension of their themselves. It's just like shit that they are wearing as like armor, instead of it being a straight up like they're in a cockpit of a vehicle, you know. As far as their head, yeah, if you wanted to experiment with a small visor of some sort, I was thinking more like a complete, like a helmet with like a full, if you know those like, oh man, there's probably some really easy example of this. But if you know that, like there's like this, the thing that we did with the Ecclesiast was just like originally it just had it had like a almost like a curved, flat piece of material. And my idea was like it would almost be like something that for the Antikythera inside it would be transparent, but it would look somewhat solid, so you wouldn't really see the face or whatever. So if you can make their visor like the whole front of the helmet, I think that would probably be good because it does kind of block peripheral vision, but it would at least allow you to, yeah, I think it would allow you to move through a lot of that stuff anyway, and still see a lot. So it's not like a really tiny visor, like for a knight or something in medieval armor, but. Yeah, so if the visor like lowers down, like maybe in those StarCraft 2 Marine cutscenes or whatever, maybe that could work. I don't know. Like, it seems a little over-engineered in StarCraft 2, but that's something you could say about a lot of the visual concepts there. So I would just say, like, if you want to start with some basic helmet designs, that might even be a nice place to start. Actually, is coming up with some sort of, because we need to figure out the general gist of what the Antikythera's design looks like, the pillars of their design. That's just something I'm going to be working on after the Sycora and the Githrovan. But since you're here right now, if you have some ideas, feel free to let me know, or if you want to post some references in the server or something. Yeah, I think that it would be nice if there was some sort of like safety, what do you call it? Something where if you let go of it, it would just still be hanging, like a cage almost, like a transparent cage around or not transparent, but like there's, the cage is really just made up of like some connecting pipes or something. But yeah, for the most part, they would be gripping it and just lumber. Like I really want to stress for the Antikythera that their weapons look oversized for like, especially for like an average human or something. But they don't really care. They're fine walking around with this shit for days. What's up, Balethal? You know, somebody tried to impersonate you 2 streams ago or a stream ago, but they didn't open with hello, which is how I knew it wasn't really you. Because you always say hello. So unless you're that impersonator, the fraud Balethal, learning from the past and not fucking annoying me. Or, no, you get the idea. That was a sentence. Yeah, these wide-ass men, dude. These are the wide lords. They'll walk right up and start drilling, if you know what I mean. That's actually one of the reasons I'm one of the reasons there's like many reasons to not just have YouTube chat. If we have a Discord chat where it just shows up on Restream and I can read it without actually having Discord open, then that's pretty good. Because if I do that, then I know if somebody's on Discord, like, oh, I know who that person is. So that would be pretty nice. And I guess that would also allow you to like respond to people a little bit more permanently or whatever. It wouldn't just be as ethereal as the chat is currently. But anyway, one of the reasons to do it is not just so that I'm anti-frauding. It's also for the purpose of it would be for the purpose of like not having to deal with the YouTube censorship shit that just randomly blocks like completely innocuous on topic messages. Like Knight of the Realm tried to say that he was thinking about the main menu background and that got blocked. It didn't even fucking, like, it's insane. So not having to deal with that would be nice. Okay. I was thinking that maybe the shields will actually not recharge for Sycora, but you can recharge them with specific support units and structures. And that way we wouldn't have to deal with the stupid issue of like, oh, my shield started recharging, so I lose this speed boost. So I think I'll actually remove the mention of them recharging. I think that's a lot cleaner of an interaction. I know you've been busy, Balethal, but I am curious. I'm actually, this question kind of goes for everybody, but I'm curious about people's takes on the newer regencies, Omindris and Dalventhos. Both of those guys are pretty epic. I think the Omindris are sleeper hit for significantly weirder than where I've placed them currently. They might grow in weirdness. And I don't know if they're really weirder than the Sycora. I don't think they're weirder than the Chitchathrans. So it seems like that's the right place for them. But yeah, it's definitely a bit different. So we'll have to see how that is put together. Also, with how many ideas I've been having, some of these Regency concepts, I don't think any of the current ones that are out there are going to be converted into upstarts. But that is another idea that I just had that I'll throw into the scratch pad. If we wanted to include some, like, some sort of isolated sect of a regency as an upstart, that would be a nice way to initially, like, plant the seed. Like, in retail even, having a Thruck upstart faction or something. That could be pretty neat. Like, you know, Thruck are a really wild concept, so. Oh, epic. Oh yeah, Shambleman. Always nice to get your opinion too. We were just talking about, speaking of things that are going to take your time and probably not pay you, at least for a while. We were talking about so we were talking about the process, the pipeline for 3D modeling, and how DF is still learning animation stuff. Now I'm confident he'll be able to learn it and do fine with it, but there was the idea that like we could somehow transpose the rigging and animation data from 3ds Max to Blender. And you, since Balethal, you seem to be pretty good at animating. At least it didn't take you that long to rig and animate the Ecclesiast. I imagine if DF rigs it and you animate it, like it would probably save us a lot of time in that sense, and then we could just send it back to 3ds Max. But I don't know how much detail would be lost there. So, and then your test renders won't have the same lighting and all this other shit. So it kind of does suck that there's like two completely distinct programs. Oh shit! What's up, Kian? Welcome. You are the 6th. You have 3. Congratulations. Kian also recently read the latest editions. I don't know if you caught what I was just mentioning earlier, Kian. I'm kind of interested in the idea of some of these weirder factions, weirder regencies, initially being upstarts as like a small subsect of them with only a couple of units or whatever. And like they're just these like wacky factions, right? And eventually they become full-fledged regencies in an expansion pack. But like as part of retail, we have like the Orla Thray as an upstart or something, where we only have like maybe 10 units for them or something crazy. Right. So maybe Baelithal. The answer is that you just learn 3ds Max. I don't know. I don't know how reasonable the animation tools are by comparison. There would definitely be a bit of a learning curve. But anyway, the idea is there if you're interested in exploring it later when you have more time, if you ever have more time, because as I'm quite sympathetic to, work always takes a lot. So I figured I'd throw the idea out there, though. I'm mostly just shadowboxing all this shit to figure out. Turns out there's a lot more to being a game and a company director than just concepts. But I am trying to do a lot of concept work every day anyway. Right. Yeah, the rune would fit that bill too. You just imagine you see these like really wacky um, upstarts that I think upstart versions of existing regencies would even kind of make sense. Like maybe not all of them. Like the Githrovans don't really, they only show up en masse basically, and for specific purposes. But I guess you could have like some, for lack of a better term, we'll use the cliche void thing here, the corrupted Githrovans. You could use, like, there could be something like that where, like, oh, some of them were sabotaged and stuck here, are now stuck here. So they, like, very dangerous, but they don't really go out and attack necessarily as much. They're just, like, really tough opponents to weed out as an upstart. Well, I wouldn't really want the whole, like, automation thing, but there have been a lot of I have had a lot of thoughts from a gameplay standpoint of certain game modes where you would actually be able to spend resources to call in an ally, and it would have to be fairly pricey. But if you could cover them in their early game as they're getting set up, they would have the same arrival animations as when you're starting off the game, like in the pre-build phase or whatever. They would arrive in, like, show up and start building some stuff. So I think in that sense, it would be possible. Maybe it would even be a common campaign mechanic. I don't know. But I like the idea of being able to call down allies over time, with maybe each one getting progressively more pricey or something. But maybe it's just a natural thing where, like, certain allies are more pricey than others, because you'd be calling in specific commanders, not just regencies. And maybe those commanders have varying levels of skill. So to get a higher skill one, you have to spend more money, something like that. Right. So you basically, like, you're intercepting early action as they're setting up their, like, separate horde of Orlithrae. And yeah, neither one mentions reprogrammed Rosellium units for, like, upstarts and stuff. It could definitely work out. Like, I think that could be really interesting. It's a way to make upstarts feel a little bit more grounded in the world as well. I imagine a lot of the Ember Seat nations, member nations, would have, like, upstart technology in there, because they are literally, like, one embassy gives you like 4 or 5 units max. So they really wouldn't have that much. And they'd probably have some, like, really, some, like, less impressive units that you don't get access to as Ember Seat because you've got better alternatives from other embassies, that, like, demonstrate how weak they are in those situations. Like, there might be, like, an artillery specialist Ember Seat member nation that, like, they've got really good artillery and maybe really good something else, like fighters or something. I don't know, whatever would potentially synergize with artillery. But the idea is, like, they've got really good that, but they don't really have really good infantry. So their infantry kind of aids. You know, they're kind of ass. You know, just shit infantry. Yeah, the Omindris are really weird, dude. I'm telling you. They're very bizarre. Yeah, I think the allies that you have access to would be like, they'd be you would decide what allies you have access to as the map developer, when you're making a scenario. Like, first you would enable or disable calling down allies in the first place, and if you enable them, you have to, like, there'd probably be some, like, defaults or whatever, that are, like, some defaults per regency, and so you'd be like, all right, give me Todd from the NCF and Dad from the Makreldas, or whatever the fuck their names are, and then you'd have like some defaults that are available to you that you would add in, and then you'd be able to just customize your own if you want to. So, and you'd also be able to set the prices of them. So yeah, if you wanted to make it so that you have Resilium as a regency to call down as an ally, then you could. But that would be specified in the map properties, and that would also be like you could have a trigger like in game that, you know, upon completing a bonus objective, or upon maybe an organic system in game where if you like safeguard an upstart or something, it converts itself into a proper regency. There's a ton of things that you could do. I just don't think a lot of them would be available in multiplayer, in competitive multiplayer, because the whole point of that is like regencies and upstarts are very segregated. You're not going to get like a sudden conversion of an upstart into a regency, and you're not going to get called down allies. You know, there could be like competitive ladders built around custom games or something where that happens, but for the most part, I think the primary competitive ladder would never have those kinds of far-reaching implications associated with their mechanics. It would be much more like focused, which is fine. And then you can have the campaign and co-op play that have these like more wild elements. Well, Ember Seed are going to be a retail faction, so all of their member nations will actually be in the game. So yeah, it should be possible as like a good number of them could be upstarts or whatever when you're... That might even be who you're dealing with in the... So in the tutorial campaign, there's going to be one of the first missions, maybe the first mission, is going to be the... Like, you're shadowing a higher... Like a veteran Antikythera general. And your task is really just to put down some upstarts, basically, like an upstart that's opened fire on other Antikythera forces during one other conflict. Then it's found out that those upstarts are being fueled, and they've got some sort of forged some sort of alliance with like a local Antikythera crew, like another Antikythera nation, basically, is like fueling them, right? And handing them more weapons and stuff. And so suddenly you're dealing with not just whatever that upstart is, but also some Antikythera enemies. So you get that parity where like whatever units you have, they have. So you get that, like, it's not as much information overload because you just have the units that you and your ally are the same regency, and the enemy is mostly the same regency as well, if not entirely the same regency. Like it might be an upstart Antikythera group that turns out, oh, they've been getting fed some other stuff. So you can see where like just that premise can give way to a lot of other cases where like the upstarts of a specific area might be, you know, member nations of the Ember Seat. And then at the same time, because Ember Seat are so, you know, strung together, right? They're pretty close together. That would be a natural way to introduce the admittedly single player or non-competitive only mechanic of an upstart converting itself into a proper regency opponent, where if the Ember Seat hold out long enough and build, you know, another embassy, then like suddenly they have actual, you know, more actual tech associated with them. They might as well be a regency, right? A fully fledged one. So, you know, I don't know if there would be an obvious telegraph state change, or if it would just be like, oh, at some point they act like a normal regency. They just have like an upstart's initial starting point. But there could be something like that. For competitive play, if all regencies are available. So we talked a little bit about this, Kian. I think I don't know if this was over, I think this was over Discord or something, where I mentioned how I was planning on having a competitive rotation. You suggested just a pick ban phase. I think as on retail, we probably don't need a pick ban phase or a rotation. We can just have the 6 there and try to design around them being somewhat balanced. So we might have like, we might not even start out with a ranked ladder and instead have unranked play. And like on retail, we get a feel for how the average player is playing and what the performance of individual regencies are. And we get to see if there's something obvious that maybe our internal testers missed about balance. Unless we're fairly confident that enough people have balance tested it, enough people have tested it in general. And we're fairly confident that not only is stability not an issue and bugs are not an issue, but the regencies themselves seem to be balanced, then we can just launch with competitive matchmaking. But either way, I think initially we won't have to worry about that. Now, when new regencies start cropping up, probably with the first expansion pack, that will be when I consider either a competitive rotation or a pick ban phase. And we also have to keep in mind that like we're really not designing around solo play, like 1v1 ladder play. I mean, maybe we have to start designing for that to some degree if it takes off, and that's like by far and away the most popular competitive mode. But we are designing it around the idea that you'll play 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, that sort of thing. So like our own tournaments would probably be 2v2s and so on. I think the first tournament would probably be 2v2. Just because that's high enough scale to keep it interesting and to keep it true to the idea of a large scale RTS, but not so high that new players are going to be overwhelmed. Like 2v2 is doable, you know what I mean? So if it's like 3v3 or 4v4, like anything beyond 2v2 feels like, oh man, I might get overwhelmed as a newish player. Like increases the barrier basically. I think I would still want a 1v1 ladder option, but I wouldn't. I don't really know how to make it so that it's obvious. Like, I don't know if it's possible or even ideal to quote unquote legislate or whatever by fiat that 2v2 or team ladder is like the more common rank or like the de facto ranked play. Like, I can say that that's what I intended, but if it's not actually what happens, then, you know, we just got to deal with that. But I think by like a way to do that is by holding a lot of team tournaments. If 2v2 becomes like the de facto game mode, which I think it certainly could, I think that's like a nice combination of high scale, team game, and like it's accessible for the esports audience or whatever, the pro scene audience, and it's also like it's still intimate enough that you can understand what's going on without it being totally mega scale. If you wanted exhibition tournaments or exhibition matches, like show matches, then you could go to free for all. You could go to fucking team free for all. You could go to crazy shit like that. I don't know if there will be a max shamble, but right now we're settling on 64 because it's a nice round number. But we might go up to 100, and even beyond that, we might just not legislate a max, and you'll just have to deal with fucking the networking performance being taking a hit with that many clients. Not sure. Right. So yeah, Kian, like the idea of making it so that 2v2 is more common would just be done by having a lot of tournaments that are 2v2s. But I'm not going to stop people from putting on 1v1 tournaments if that's what they want. And if that's where the game goes, that's where the game goes. I don't really need to worry about it. 1v1s will still be more large scale than Brood War in this game. So I'm still getting what I want if there is a pro scene at all. And I guess even if there isn't a pro scene at all, I'm still getting what I want because I got a game that I want to play, which is really all I want. It's just how much time can I realistically work on it if it's not a financial success. That's really the only concern. And there's nothing that would brick wall the project unless I have a fucking heart attack or something. Fingers crossed. Knock on wood. You had some ideas for medieval or prehistoric fantasy setting, offshoot of Cosmo. You have to learn 3D to execute something like that. Yeah, it doesn't really need to have the scale of Cosmo Anarchy, though. The only reason why I go for like large scale stuff is because I really like the cooperative slant, and it doesn't have to be cooperative with other humans, but cooperative slant of large scale battles. That's what I'm drawn to. And I like the idea that I'm getting immersed into a battlefield where I can be a critical component of how the battle ends, but I'm not responsible for literally everything that happens. And you'll notice that, like, it's no surprise then that the least interesting aspects of game design, or games in general, are when it's just I'm a cameraman capturing all of the footage and following, like, prescriptive discussions or, like, instructions. Or it's like I have to go find all the gameplay instead of some of it happening around me, I think that that's bad form in an objective sense, because you're basically not making a game where you're meant to express skill as much as you're making a game where you're meant to experience a linear story. But even beyond that, like, my personal bias is definitely towards having such a scale that the world feels alive. And the main reason, or main way for the world to feel alive, in my experience, is just to make it so that there's a bunch of shit going on, for lack of a better term. Well, like, the thing is, different people, like, I think we've talked about this before on stream. There's obviously a bias that I have against games that don't actually involve playing a game. And those would be like the narrative heavy games like walking simulators, What Remains of Edith Finch or whatever, Gone Home, stuff like that. Or anything like Half-Life 2 or even Half-Life 1, where you don't really have an open-ended way to experience the content. It's just experience this content the way we wanted you to. Like, to me, there's not really that much of a distinction between Half-Life 1 and one of those walking sim games, because it's go here, then go there, in that order, no questions asked, and you get some creativity with how you do it, but it's almost a formality as opposed to it being an actual element of the construction of the game, where the intent was to put control in the hands of the player. That's almost never where it actually is. That's almost never the focus of game developers who are making those kinds of games, where you are meant to experience a narrative and you are a cameraman in that sense, where really it doesn't matter who plays. Like, you can get the same effect watching a Half-Life 1 playthrough from somebody else like me playing the game than you can playing it yourself. There's very few cases, you'll notice, where you're in these like more sprawling open areas where maybe you would have a completely different approach to solving a puzzle or dealing with an enemy composition than I would, because there's very few cases in the base game. There's a little bit more in the expansion packs, or at least the one expansion pack. Maybe it was Opposing Force or something. Whatever the one that wasn't Blue Shift. There are some expansion content that has a little bit more going for it, but that wasn't even the original devs. In the base game, there's a lot less possibility for you yourself as a player to express a different playstyle than me, a Let's Player, that you might be watching play the game. And I think the biggest issue there is that I'm not really playing a game then. I'm experiencing a narrative, and I'm moving between points in the narrative, and like, the story's kind of telling itself in that sense, instead of me influencing how the story is told. Nothing that I do is reflected, for example. Like, it's a given that I'm going to overcome the obstacle AI that is just there to slow me down and to provide some formality of you having engagement. And once that's done, it's not like, did I take a long time to do it? In which case things are different. Was it really hard for me to do it? In which case my character will, be a little bit more beleaguered in their voice acting delivery. Spoiler, there's no voice acting in Half-Life. And then is there going to be some reaction, something different that happens when I do something different than another player? And if there's not any prescribed reaction, because there's nothing programmed in by the developers to adhere for that, and there's nothing to discover where there's no emergent gameplay that is naturally going to change with the way that I approach these things, then yeah, odds are that you're not really playing a game as much as you are experiencing an experience, for lack of a better term. That's the biggest issue, is we don't have the terminology to describe walking simulators. We don't really have the terms to describe interactive novels or whatever. Like, we just don't have the language to do it yet. And so those are lumped in with video games. And as a result, that has corrupted the understanding most people have of what a video game is, or what a video game could even be, because most people are used to this sort of poisoning of the well that admittedly is, maybe I'm making it sound a little bit more nefarious than it really is. I don't think it was deliberate. It's just that because nobody bothered inventing language for interactive experiences that are a little bit more narrative driven, nobody has like some pithy summary term that's caught on like wildfire and is widely used. They just call them games, even when they are expressly not games. There might be some really brilliant walking sims out there that have some really great characterization, good character development, really nice storytelling and story framing, good shots that are automatically sat there in the cutscenes or whatever, like well directed, well choreographed. That might be the case. But for one, not my style, not really what I'm interested in. And that's totally fine, right? That's a subjective critique, or not even a critique, just a reality. But the objective nature of it is that you can't judge them like a video game where the bulk of the storytelling is meant to be developed by the player. You can't judge them by the same metric because they're not deploying the same tools. They're not even trying to be the same thing. It's just that we don't have a term for that, right? So I think that's where a lot of angst happens against those kinds of games where people look down on them. I don't look down on them as much as I just don't understand, like, I look down at the classification mostly. You can't call them games because they're not really the same thing. They're not the same thing as playing Brood War 1v1 and the entire outcome of the game being dependent on you or your opponent and what you guys do. You can't compare them to more open-ended games, like even the old school Doom games where you're going to pick a different weapon than the other guy, and there's so much opportunity for you to do something different. And like that's confined to very specific arenas in Half-Life 1, and even then it's very hit or miss, we'll say inconsistent in terms of when it actually happens, when you're allowed to play something, and compared that to when you can actually play it. Now, there's going to be specific pockets of gameplay in those games, but for the most part, you're just moving from point A to point B in a narrative, and you can make that satisfying because that's what movies do, right? Good movies do that because it's always on rails. You can't rewind. I mean, you could rewind, but you can't rewind and do something different. You can't go down a different path. So yeah, I think most people just, there's a reason why those types of games are looked down upon, and it's not really what we want to poison the well over here in our territory of actual games. So we need to come up with a better term that doesn't corrupt people's understanding and fuck with people's dictionaries, because there's some merit to that experience, but calling it a game is what I think creates a lot of animosity. Can one of the upstarts be Helix Watch? Yeah, interactive movie. Right, yeah. So, like, people, the fact that they are very different things and shouldn't be called the same thing is evident in the fact that you have to be in a different mood for it. Just like I have to be in a different mood to watch a movie than I do to play a game, it's the same thing. It's a different genre. It's a different medium entirely. Just because it uses point and click interaction does not make it a game. Just like, I don't know. There's so many different examples you could go for, but you get the idea. There's more to it than what we've got so far. Ahmed will make a return in Xibalba. You heard it here first. That alone should get us a couple million sales. And all of them will be Ahmed's many clones buying the game. Ahmed is his own Regency. You don't know that. He might be Kolopoazos or Gadamemter, dude. Dude, the subscriptions are... I just want to be able to pay one upfront cost to purchase a product and have it forever. Why is that so hard? I'll answer that question for myself. It's not because you need to cover more costs. Like, here's the thing, right? So recently I got kicked off of a YouTube premium plan that I wasn't personally paying for. I was just on the family plan. And that made me realize just how bad, how predatory YouTube is by default, where they don't allow background play if you're not on a premium. which is not something that costs them money, right? It's literally just feature restrictions. Like it costs them nothing to enable that, right? In an abstract way, I guess you could say that maybe it costs them money to serve more videos to somebody in the background because they're watching more videos on YouTube. But like that just means they're using your service more. So it would be really nice if companies had the transparency to say, we're providing a service. Here's the percentage of the price of a subscription model or a one-time purchase model that here's an example of like how much that covers for how long that covers it. Like imagine if the subscription model, instead of it being fucking monthly, because it's like $12 a month or something for YouTube Premium. It's pretty pricey. This is USD, obviously. So imagine spending that much money. Now imagine knowing how much money, how much percentage of that is actually covering the costs of you as a user, right? Now, if I spend a once a year upfront fee of $10 or something like that, which would still be pretty pricey to be honest, but let's say that's the fee. I think YouTube is still making money off of my purchase because I don't think it costs them $10 per user for an entire year's worth of serving, video, and doing so without making money back on ads. I'm pretty sure it doesn't cost that much money. Now, maybe I'm completely wrong about that, but if they were transparent and said, here's our balance sheet, basically, like here's how much money it takes to, operate the servers or whatever, like I would have no argument against it, right? I would have no argument against that unless I thought that they fudged their numbers or some shit, but we'll assume that actually they didn't. Yeah, bandwidth and power, running the servers, all that stuff is cheap. Like, I think $10 a year is pretty fucking good for YouTube. If they get that from anybody who wants to avoid ads, that's something where I still think it's overpriced, but I'll still do it, probably. At least I would imagine users who would do it. I probably wouldn't just because I don't want to give Google money, but that's like a different moral standpoint. From if you isolate that and you just talk about the product itself is like how much of that is at costing the company, and then how much of that is that worth to them. That's where it really gets me about like sending the like videos and playing in the background or not having the video paused, continue watching ? Thing. Like how much of that is actually related to a cost that goes away when you pay money for it, and how much of that is just them reducing the feature set and making the service more annoying to use so that they can essentially extort more money out of you. They're holding features over your head and saying, you don't get these that don't cost anything for us to give you. You don't get these until you pay us. Like, why the fuck is anybody even paying for it at that point? Yeah, Kian, they can't have that. Yeah, annoying people to give you money. That's actually, I fundamentally, even though I sound very dour in a lot of these streams or in a lot of the contexts where people ask me questions about stuff, I actually believe that people will spend money on a product that they believe in. They'll pay a fair price for the value that they get, and they might even go above and beyond as a gesture of goodwill and maybe donate extra for operating servers or whatever the costs are for development. If they really feel that the product adds to their life and improves their life. So, like, you don't actually need to be predatory in your charging or your subscriptions or your fucking, your general pricing model. And you don't need to annoy people into buying a premium, package or something, just so that they, like, you don't need to extort money out of them. Like, they will give you money for the product in exchange for the product, and probably more money than what you're actually charging for it if you actually put in the effort to make the product good. And that's a fundamental belief that maybe I'll be proven wrong, or maybe there will be some evidence against it after I'm done with this product. But that's one of the main reasons why I'm able to put my money where my mouth is here and say, I will not have microtransactions, and I will not have more than one DLC at any given time. And I will give content for free, where possible. And I will be transparent with the budget sheets and all that. Right, yeah. You will get a sense of pride and accomplishment by beating single-player content that actually challenges you and competing with other human players in a competitive ladder. And maybe making your own content, if you're interested in that. There are many ways to get senses of pride and accomplishment. Yeah. I'm hoping that, I mean, I have a lot of grand aspirations just in terms of what the game I want to make is. But if I can allow myself to have a grand aspiration beyond just a game and talk about the whole industry, hopefully, as I state in the meta documentation for Xibalba, I would like to set an example of responsible and sustainable pricing that other developers can follow. Now, they can follow it. That doesn't mean they will. And they probably won't because it will make them less profit overall, even though it will improve the product that they put out and improve their relations with customers. But maybe there's an outside chance that if this kind of model takes off, insofar as more and more developers do it and their games are better received for it, and it kind of wakes people up to understanding what could be the model, even though it's not the model right now, what could be the status quo if more and more people went this model, that could be a very big selling point, and it could be a very big sea change in the industry. Now, I don't think it's going to happen, and I'm not really going to allow myself to think that it's like really that possible. I know it is, like anything is, but I'm not saying like, oh yeah, this is definitely going to happen. We're going to change the whole world. But if I allow myself for a moment to fantasize about what might happen, that would be pretty awesome, to be honest. That would be like, let's do it. So. If we can sort of push people in that direction, if we can reclaim a bunch of ground that's been eaten up, like the fact that you have cosmetic only microtransactions doesn't fucking absolve you here. Like being able to customize your visual appearance in a video game, and also, by the way, being able to turn that off if you only wanted the base assets, yeah, that should be a fucking default, because what if readability issues? What if somebody just wants to look at the old stuff all the time for competitive integrity? Like, yeah, what about competitive integrity? We have RNG in our game, by the way. Ridiculous. It would be really nice to reclaim customization of somebody's appearance. That's one of the main ways that players can express themselves. Like, yeah, they can do it through the mechanics, but being able to customize your appearance in fundamental ways has been that's been a staple of console shooters from like the mid 2000s. Like that was a staple of basically every game. Like the army painter in Warhammer 40k games, for example, is like they're trying to sort of allow you to customize the appearance, and they give you some pretty reasonable options. Like would be nice to have more explicit control, but that's way leagues ahead of everything else. And like you have to realize that most people would just be like, "Oh, you want this color? $1.99, please." Like fuck off, dude. Just give me all the colors. Yeah, I think hopefully we'll filter out most of the people who aren't even interested in a return to sensibility, right? As we're calling it. They're not even interested in a legitimate conversation about whether or not it is a return to sensibility or like what the problems of the industry are. We'll filter out most of those people because most of the people who have those very base takes and often are whales as well, like they're also not very competitive people usually. I find that there are people who are really into the whole pay to win scheme because they have money and they'll pay to win literally, like, or they want to flaunt how much money they have in the game. They want to use that as like a vector for that, right? Now that's not the only motivation. There's plenty more psychology that goes into it, and I would be reductive to say that that's the only reason. But I feel like most of those people, by and large, tend to not be very competitive. So they probably won't bother with our games because our games are challenging you even in the single player. There's no difficulty selection. You can't make it easier. I mean, maybe there'll be a mod or something to make it easier for normies. But there's no cheat codes. Like, there's nothing there, dude. You got to win if you're not playing a modded game to make it easier or whatever. Oh, that's really embarrassing. Yeah, Halo customization was always something you could do. And I remember feeling really scammed by having it gated behind like grinding in game for not in-game currency, just in-game like experience or whatever in Halo Reach. I felt like it was kind of scammed because you could just customize it all the time in other games. Now you had less specific customizations, like you could just change your whole color in Halo 1. And I think in Halo 2 is something else, something additional, maybe multiple colors. But So as the game went on, you could like they gave you more options, and then in Halo Reach they went back on that and just locked it behind like achievements or fucking experience or whatever. And to me, that was like kind of lame. I would prefer to. I guess it was in-game currency, but I don't think you could buy. Yeah, there was like credits or something you could buy like voice packs for, but I don't think you could buy more credits. It was something that was exclusively grind in game, and I just felt like, why can't I just customize my appearance though? Like, why can't I just find something that I like and that speaks to me in some way, and then do that? The fact that we're just grown accustomed to these being locked behind grind or fiscal pay, like sort of paywalls, like temporal or fiscal paywalls, feels pretty dumb. Brood War Cosmonarchy, you can't play multiple games in a row, and there's a lot of AI related issues. If you're just playing PvP, I think there's desync issues too. So yeah, it's not in a very good spot at all. You can only play against AI, and even then there's like chances where some crash happens or some desync happens. We just haven't bothered trying to investigate them because it's so difficult. The engine is so fragile, and like random shit just breaks. Like we didn't touch the Star Sovereign, and it just broke. So, like, what the fuck? And we can't even really figure out what broke it. Like, we'd have to revert a million commits or something. So, it's just better to just move on to Antikythera. Like, we already have the ability. I don't know if you were here earlier, Night of the Realm, when I was demoing it, but we already have the ability to mass select, to queue orders. We have Fog of War, a primitive implementation. But it shows buildings that you've explored. It shows resources in general that will probably change later. It shows, like, the whole map and stuff, so. Yeah, like it can't be presented as a finished send off or anything. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think this is a pretty solid initial point to stop on for the Sycora. Oh wait. We'll move on to the Githrovan real quick, and then I'll do some Ansifi design pillars. And then I also have to craft. Yeah, there was this. What do you mean, APOS? Yeah, Balethal, I think as far as like achievements go or whatever, I would probably just have like badges or something you could put on your profile that are specifically like something that specifically allows for like an area that is meant to show off like how good you are or whatever, right? So if you have like, you know, some sort of campaign completionist badge where you completed all retail campaigns, and then there's like a badge where you completed like expansion campaigns for each expansion, like individual badges or something. A little showcase there. I think that's fine. But and then like multiplayer rank and stuff. But I don't think we should be like locking you out of being able to customize the visual appearance of your units or something, if we allow that at all. I don't think locking that behind achievements really makes sense. Well, you know the number of achievements that are out there that are just literally like launch the game. It's really embarrassing when I launch the game, get an achievement, and then Steam tells me that only 90% of players have this achievement. So we can play Cosmonarchy as soon as probably by the end of this month we'll have some sort of demo. I don't know if it'll be playable in PvP yet, but some sort of demo will probably be in some position. I am working with Veek, who is doing the engine development and programming side of things. I know enough about programming to help him out with like conceptual stuff, but he's way better at like low level stuff than I am. So we're writing it in C. Then I've got Alexander, Knight of the Realm, in the YouTube chat. He's doing some concept art. And then Darkened Fantasies, who's not in the chat currently, does 3D modeling. Balethal did some 3D modeling and animating and stuff as well for the Brood War mod, but not sure what his involvement will be, how exhaustive his involvement will be here, because obviously everybody's busy with their own stuff. But yeah, for them, like it's mostly Veek and me doing, Veek and I doing the bulk of the work, and then there's like audiovisual stuff. We'll have a guy called Roller Skates, who sometimes shows up in the Twitch chat, is sending me some audio from now and again, and he's talked about getting his own like Foley setup done so he can record higher quality stuff, which would be nice, because it would be all of the audio that I'm going to use is probably going to be mostly placeholder, because it's just going to be taken from other sources, just like the visuals. So. We have 2 custom graphics, but one is a building, the other is a unit. Everything else, like two things that were completely made for Cosmonarchy. Everything else is like rips from other games or Brood War assets. We will obviously have to replace all of those, so that's what we're working on. But since every regency is supposed to have about 100 units and 40 structures, and we're planning 20 regencies minimum, although only 6 for retail, that's still, what, 600 plus 40 times 6 is 280, or 240 rather. So yeah, that's 840 on average. An estimate, we'll say about 1,000, because we're working in like projectiles. Is going to be way more than that, because every unique weapon is going to have a unique projectile and impact effect. But if we were talking about models, yeah, we're probably looking at like about 1,000 minimum. And then there's all like the doodads and upstarts and shit. So, oh yeah, that's right, the ion cannon. I forgot about that, because it's like another concept, right? But that was made from the ground up by DF. Pretty good. I guess I'll actually unmute the audio for this. This is an experience. There you go. I think Apos has actually seen this already. But as you can see, the bullet doesn't actually originate correctly. That's just because this game is stupid and has a dumb engine. And I guess he also redid the factory and machine shop so that they're at a different angle. So there's that. Yeah. I think we could use that, because it is a completely original model. It's just the concept comes from something else. So. It would be pretty trivial for him to modify like the external aspect of it or whatever. So. Yeah, Folk asked this earlier in the stream. There'll be a custom stuff. When you buy the game, you just get a non-commercial license to the source code. So anything you can't handle with our built-in data editor tools, like if you're writing your own behaviors, you can just do that. So, or if you wanted to make an entirely different game, I guess. You just can't sell it for obvious reasons. What's up, Ultra? Welcome, homie. I don't think we would really need to, like, listen, Balethal. Blizzard would so quickly set a precedent to get sued by Games Workshop themselves, and whoever owns the rights to Alien, and whoever owns the rights to Predator, and whoever owns the rights to Mass Effect, and whoever owns the like, they'd get sued by every fucking which way for all of the derivative shit that they made. So if they bothered trying to do something like that, I guess they probably still would potentially try it, because we were releasing a commercial product. But like, it's a completely different thing. So I just have some savings saved up. Eventually, I'll have to go back to work, but yeah, I mean, the ion cannon from Command and Conquer, you know, in general, it probably wouldn't even be. As you can see, there's a slow-moving projectile. It's not really an ion cannon, is it? So it probably wouldn't even be called ion cannon. I don't know anything about the ion cannon from Star Wars. Well, if you plan to release using somebody else's storefront, you don't qualify as indie. But I guess in the useless fucking nomenclature that indie operates on right now, then yeah, I guess you could say that. Like, one of the only indie games I've ever actually seen is that Dwarf Fortress game. We'll release through our own website as well, but we don't plan to not use Steam. So. Yeah, but I don't actually think that Blizzard could do it. Like we made the model ourselves, animated it ourselves, did the particle effects ourselves. I guess the audio is probably from some proprietary source, but it's not Blizzard, so they can't sue us for that either. They can get fucked. That's what I say. Because we did your concept and did it better. Noob. All right, let's move on to Githrovan before I lose my mind. Okay, the Githrovan. What do we need for these guys? Did they? Okay, we did talk about the power generators. We talked about structures operating at reduced efficiency when not powered. What a disaster of a paragraph that used to be. Bonk. Yeah, we basically don't have too much information about the. We talk a little bit about this stuff, and we talk about the profanations, but we don't really talk about what these can do. I think this is where we would go into pretty good details about, like we would just give like a sentence here that does like examples, and then of their like top tier power. We talk about deployment, which is good. We mentioned that they don't have any tech requirements, which is good. And I think we need to maybe lean in a little bit more on like their sun worship and their psionic mastery, or psychic mastery as it is. See you later, Shambleman. Cheers. Thanks for hanging. Yeah, I've been really lacking or lagging behind when it comes to like making public facing content. I have to build a YouTube channel for the No Frauds Club and start posting updates there, as well as like I started writing a script for like a Frauds Club primer. You can see a little bit of it here. I was obviously there's like some information here. I like the idea of presenting Cosmonarchy in some degree of scale, and talk about how like you compare like Brood War and like its measly pittance of a scale, where like 3 units are attacking, or maybe even Warcraft 3. I did have the cheeky idea of comparing Immortal, that Star Spear, Sun Spear game, whatever those guys are, where they have like 5 units, and like comparing that to Cosmonarchy. But the trouble is, I actually need something to present, and I don't have any of that yet. And I guess I have to rewrite some of this to mention that like it eventually will have thousands of units and so on. But I would like to do something like that, mentioning basically the different products we're going to be making, and essentially like a quick like 2 or 3 minute video explaining who we are. I think that would be pretty useful for people. Jean David Moisant. Well, I assume that means it's APOD. What's up, homie? I probably butchered your name too. That's why you chat on Twitch, because if I butcher your name there, it's at least more reasonable. And now I just showed off my American. Oh, this is a full stop when it should be a comma. Owned. So besides the Star Sovereign, I do have to think a little bit about like what other technology the Githrovan might have that would be considered massively profane. Because when I was looking at the profane, what do you call it? If I go to cause monarchy, when I was looking at the profane stuff for Protoss, like you have Demiurge, obviously, which that's basically what the Solar Throne is built around, these mind-controlling automatons. But what else would be considered profane exactly? Like you have technology, like collaborations with other races. That's not going to be massively powerful. The Anthelian is a little bit more like a Cathethron or technology than anything, so that probably wouldn't even be related. Maybe you could make an argument for it being on the Solar Throne, but either way, it wouldn't be on the Githrovan side. And then you have like these shadowy warriors that are maybe dishonorable. I guess you could have an argument for that, but I'm not sure. So I'll have a think about what would constitute profane displays of power, while still being disparate and distinct from the Solar Throne's eventual peerless displays of power. So, but as far as some other text goes, I actually don't really know what I should throw in here because I did cover their defining traits and their mystics and general warriors. I guess I could cover the armor and the striders. I mean, the combat armor is considered there. So, what about the like more conventional vehicles? Hmm. I'm not sure if they will carry wounded veterans into battle. That is very much a straight copy paste from Striders and from Protoss Striders. I think instead they would be like, I don't know. I don't know if there's much of a reason for Striders to exist if they don't have warriors in them because they don't want automatons, obviously. So I think they might just be like vehicles or whatever. Yeah, good luck indeed. More people we get that are a little bit more interested in putting value first, the better, I think. So here's hoping for great success. I don't think I'll be using a carrier type unit in the Githrovan army. I think I'll probably save that for stuff like Rosellium or whatever, where there's a little bit more swarming, a little bit more justification for swarming type gameplay. For Githrovan, I would like, I'd probably have some bomber craft or whatever, but I would like their entire regency more or less to be built around like single really potent units, rather than worrying about like having any aspect of swarming clouding their judgment. I mean, maybe I'll pivot away from that for small things here and there. But... So this is pretty good. I think we'll just copy this whole thing because I don't remember what all I changed. I told you guys that would be easy compared to the other dudes. Did I change anything about this? I don't think so. Yeah, I haven't written anything about their appearance yet. That will take some time, but I'll do that later. Wasn't really what I was targeting today anyway. Update. Githrovan. Oh, I guess we should quickly spell check here. Nope, seems fine. All right, so Knight of the Realm, let's talk a little bit about the Ancifi, since I know you've been, you organized a thread for the Mason. All right, so I really wish the spoiler thing didn't just close itself when I clicked like even when I click an image, it closes itself, which is pretty funny. So first things first, I wanted to clarify some general things. So I said earlier that this is the drill that spoke to me the most as far as like a handheld, like big ass handheld drill. I think the reason why I like it is that it is kind of unconventional in terms of how it's assembled. I'm not sure if we'll stick with the 3 drill bits, not just because 3, but because I don't know how appropriate it actually is. Yeah, I can't have you see any spoilers. There's probably like a more up-to-date spoiler thing here somewhere, but I don't know. I'm just using some plugin for it on the forum. The idea that I had for this was, now we talked about like a central pipe coming out for welding and fusing, and this would essentially be like a fusion cutter type thing where it would be used for base construction. So that's just so that you can explain how they harvest and construct at the same time without like changing any aspect of it. I guess the other thing we could do is have the drill itself actually change a module or something visibly. So it would animate like the retraction of the drill bits and the and moving forward with that. I don't know. we'll think about that later. But for now, I think it's fine to have them all be one piece. It's a little bit more simple, and you'll just see fire come out of it when they're constructing. And if you look closely enough, you'll see as a player the sort of the source of the flames being central height peep. Heat pipe. Height peep, by the way. Heat pipe. So yeah, you could just make it so that the drill's like spread out a little bit to reveal it or something. Well, not you, but the modeler and animator could do that. So that's what we could do conceptually. So especially since they have these like little arms on it, if you copied some sort of system like that, where they could just be pulled, sort of they can articulate backwards or something, or like out, they can pull back, I think that would also be fine. So yeah. Right. I did not see Dynamo Dream, but I know a guy named Dynamo whose username is Dynamo. Maybe I can find him. Looks like it's a short sci-fi series or something, maybe post-apocalyptic, judging by the art. So for the loader, I obviously don't want it to be bright yellow. I think that's pretty goofy. And I also don't want these giant, like, these things were basically used for SCVs in the cutscene, but they completely changed the design later. Rather than these existing, you're just going to have, like, conventional gloves. This was mostly to give scale for the size of the armor that I kind of wanted. Where this is the scale, like, it'll be wider, broader shoulders, but this will probably be the relative scale of the Antikythera that's inside it. So that's something that I think will... I wanted to clarify because I don't think I mentioned that. I'm pretty sure in the concept it just slaps the references there. So yeah, I think the ultimate end goal should be to get something that's broader shoulder than this and feels less like a machine you pilot and more like a suit that goes around you that you use to interact with like hostile environments. So it is a hostile environment suit more than it is a walker or a mech or something. More of a like power armor. We discussed this briefly earlier, but I figured I would just repost that. So I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to cover about this, and I'll try to add this information in like an hour or something when I'm done with my I'm done eating and stuff. But as this is towards the end of the stream, as far as like core design concepts go, I think the bulk of the Antikythera visual design pillars is going to come from like their color scheme a bit, but also the kinds of angles that I want their stuff to look like. I think it would be fine if we took a lot of cues from conventional sci-fi architecture from humans. So if I look for sci-fi human and I just look an image, looking at some of the technology, like you get this style is a little bit lame to me. It's just like a form-fitting suit, and obviously the proportions are all wrong. Got some tits. Thankfully, nothing that's going to get me banned yet. Yeah, I guess we could do sci-fi architecture. This is kind of interesting looking. Owned. There we go. Their building is a ship, basically. That's kind of neat. I don't think this would be used for Antikythera, but I'll save that for later. So I don't think I left the Antikythera stuff in anywhere. Oh, I think I did actually. It's in the NC other useful concepts thing, which I should move to the forum at some point. But I'll do that. I guess I can just do that now. Why does it only sometimes work? What the fuck? Okay, we have to fucking sort through this shit. Hold on. Okay, I think I got everything now. Maybe. Oh, I think I pasted it twice. That's pretty good. Owned. Yeah, there'll be a couple of ideas there for sure. Okay, now I think I've got them. Add unsorted concept. So for the legs, yeah, I guess so. Like it would be more like an armor than a suit, or like more like a suit, an armor suit than a mech walker, like separate entity. So it would conform to the general idea of what the Antikythera were supposed to be. So you would see like maybe some hinset muscle tone um, or like general proportion of the legs. Remember, their whole bodies are very wide compared to humans, right? So you can kind of see a human reference over here. Um, these guys are like twice, maybe 3 times the width. So The torso, as far as like the loader is concerned, or the concept of the mason itself is concerned, would be, again, remembering that the back needs to extend out sort of like this one does, but house, like protect life support info or materials, I should say. That's going to need its own little extra part that extrudes back. But the front should be fairly form-fitting to the chest. So I imagine it can be fairly flat, and maybe there can be like a... There could probably be some sort of like maybe large, obvious switch or something that could be used to... maybe that's where, like, when they're putting the suit away, like they're getting out of the suit, they like walk up to a facility and it sort of like docks there or something. Is this another fraud? It's a good thing that's the end of my stream. I have no patience for this. These are very abstract. I don't know if we really need all that. So yeah, hopefully I answered all of your questions. If you got any more, hit me with them in the Discord server. I'm going to bail out for now. It was a productive and conversational stream. And I'm out of here, dude. I've got some other stuff to do. The decision is just like... I would try maybe 2 of them held horizontally yeah, it would be horizontally. Left, right. 2 of them held horizontally to each other, sort of like this, where one of them turns the other way, obviously, so they wouldn't turn in the same direction. We'll try that. If that doesn't work, we have a concept where it's very clearly articulated that there's 3. We could try that as well. And then the drills would sort of like pull up a little bit to reveal the heat pipe, probably. So we can just operate on that principle for now, if you want to start with that. And I'll have a think about it if I need to change anything else or whatever when I see it, but that should be it. Anything else? Like I said, hit me up in DMs or something. I'll see you boys later.